think they're going to come. Oh, okay.
I think it's going to be soon. Here you go. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Christopher Decker. I'm Director Tay Anderson's attorney, and I'm pleased to be here with a group of supporters of Tay. We're here to discuss the open letter that Tay drafted today to the Denver School Board, and more generally to the general community. Today, Tay Anderson is returning to his elected duties. Nearly 4 months ago, we stood at this very spot when the anonymous allegations first arose, and we responded to them, and we have denied them. We have cooperated in the so-called independent investigation that DPS has initiated. We were told that that was going to be 30 days. That's one of the reasons why Director Anderson stepped back during some particularly hurtful allegations, which are also false, which have also not materialized to any charges, any formal allegations, not even a police contact. So we're here today to discuss the letter that Director Anderson drafted today, and I, as his attorney, will handle some of the questions related to the investigation, which is ongoing. I have some important clarifications responding to DPS's statement that they issued this afternoon in response to Director Anderson's comments, but I'll wait until or unless those issues are prompted by any questions. But without further ado, I would like to reunite Director Tay Anderson to the Denver community. Welcome back.
Thank you. Wow, it feels good to be back here. We're not going to have any crying pictures today because that's what the media likes to run on their front pages. So this is the time for us to not only, this is not a celebration over any survivor of sexual assault. This is us returning to the work the voters elected me to do in 2019. Yeah. And for those who might need a refresher, that was 67,213 people, 51% in a three-way race that sent a clear mandate saying, we need new leadership in this city. And they did just that, and I am going to finish my term until 2023. So today I'll be sharing some of the excerpts of the open letter that I gave to the Denver School Board early this morning, telling them my intention to return to work. And, you know, I want to be able to go through this with a warning for those as we will talk about suicide and depression, but I want to be able to be here today to let our students in Denver that are watching this know we are making a commitment to make sure that we have the necessary tools to prevent suicide among young people in the city and county of Denver. So on the morning of May 29th in 2021, I began contemplating taking my own life, not because I felt guilty of anything I was being accused of, but because I could no longer bear the weight of my own community thinking I was a sexual predator, or that my family has been attacked in the public spaces, and my newborn son, my beautiful baby boy Khalil, was even the subject to hateful threats and comments, which are completely unacceptable. I began reflecting on why I decided to get into this work, and it was to protect our students, not to hurt them. And in the following days, I expressed the need for me to take a leave of absence from the Denver School Board to my colleagues on the Denver Public Schools Board of Education and DPS staff. I was told abruptly that a leave of absence did not exist for the members of this board, and that the only two ways that I would be able to take a step back from their point of view was either to resign or to recuse myself from future votes. Those were not options we were willing to explore. The board also said that we would not remain silent for Tay Anderson any longer. I said this was not about remaining silent for me. This was simply me just asking, in the moment of a personal health crisis that I did not want to be made public, I asked to please step back, just if any other board member wasn't there. We've had board members miss votes or miss meetings for several other things, and my colleagues weren't willing to do so at that time, so that is why I issued the statement saying that I would step back from everyday duties until the duration of the investigation. However, today, after much prayer and consultation with family, I am formally announcing my return to my full duties as a duly elected member on the Denver Public Schools Board of Education. And this goes into effect immediately. I do not make this decision lightly, and the independent investigation has bogged down and drifted into new areas and dragged well past the timeline that we agreed to. We still remain committed to engaging in a fair, transparent, independent investigation. However, no credible evidence has emerged to support any of the allegations of sexual assault against me, and I have not been arrested. I'm still here. All right. I have not been charged, nor have I even been contacted by a single law enforcement agency, and it has been 4 months. These, more than anything, our DPS community has been fractured by these false allegations, and I am left and compelled to try to heal the divisions from which this situation has caused. The important work which must be done for the upcoming school year cannot wait any longer for my elected participation. Despite the original agreements on the scope and timeline of this investigation between myself and the independent firm, the independent investigation has drifted into vastly new areas, including a period of time where I was not even an adult, a DPS employee, or a DPS board member. And I am committed to healing the harm this entire controversy has caused to all of our communities. But I can't and won't do that alone. There must be a commitment from every member on the Board of Education to seek true transformative justice to heal the harm that all of us have experienced. Nothing is more important than the work we must do to create safe spaces and pathways for survivors in our community to come forward, to share their stories, to seek true restorative justice, because the restorative decisions we are making right now as a community is an opportunity for us to strengthen sexual education in our classrooms and consent courses in the Denver public schools. The space we hold right now is a precipice to be bold in how we refute racist narratives that have plagued sexual violence for so long. We stand in a place where we must believe science and fight the COVID-19 pandemic. We must fight back to the white supremacist narratives that have arisen and that are fighting against critical race theory. We must make sure and finally, after almost taking my own life, I have a commitment to doing everything in my power to strengthen our suicide prevention tools for all of our young adults. And all of this work remains too important for me to stay away from the DPS school board any longer. We must still remain centered in our commitment that all students in DPS have basic human rights to afford it to them regardless of who they love, how they identify, or what trauma they may have experienced. There's so much more work to do, and I am committed to doing the people's work until the end of my term in 2023. Yes, I said 2023. You got 2 more years with me, and then some more afterwards. And believe that in order to do our best work for our community, it is imperative to have all members of the DPS school board engaged and actively representing their constituents that duly elected them. And I ended my charge to the board to tell them it's time for us to get back to work. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Bishop Jerry Demmer, and I am the president of the Greater Metro Denver Ministerial Alliance. And I stand here representing the ministry. And when we talk about ministry, we talk about reconciliation. And when we talk about the word restorative justice, as we look up that word, first of all, you have to have a crime happen to make to restore. Hello, somebody. We need an offender and we need a victim. And so it's kind of hard to do that when there has not been one arrest. When I know people at the police department, I talked to them. I know people in the DA's office. I spoke with them. They said, we're not even looking at it. Wow. We're not even investigating it. So we stand here as the ministers of the city to say, it is now time for Tay to go back to work and to be, come on somebody, in the position that we voted him in to be, and that is for our children. The Eighth Amendment talks about cruel and unusual punishment. It's cruel and unusual punishment when you make accusations without no proof. It's cruel and unusual punishment when you hurt a man and his family. It's cruel and unusual punishment, hello somebody, when you try to destroy his community reputation. I'm asking and I'm calling on everyone that did a piece, media, I don't care who it is. You need to go on and say, listen, we stand behind Tay. We stand behind Tay. Amen. We are committed. Hello. We stand against this horrible, horrible accusation. Amen. And we're so excited about him going back to work for us. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Andrea Merida. I am a former DPS school board member and represented very proudly Southwest Denver, which my numbers tell me still has the lion's share of students who come from English as a second language homes. And one thing that I would like to say is I want to express gratitude to Tay. Those of us who are involved in public education and who are involved in the health, welfare, and safety of our youth, we say to each other all the time, we're doing it for the kids. Watch what you're doing because the kids are watching. Amen. And I am grateful to Tay because it is very, very rare to find an elected official who has enough humility, who has enough grace, who has enough integrity to make right what he has done wrong. This is something that we all need to learn from, and the kids are watching. However, what Tay has also taught us is how to maintain composure, how to be willing to participate with investigations, how to be willing to tell people what has happened from his perspective when he has been falsely accused. And the other lesson that we need to be teaching the youth in this city is how to be fair, how to face the person that you're accusing, or have someone report for you. And to the people who have newly arrived in Denver and who have tried to sow division among the black and brown community in this town, we have fought together for decades. Amen. We will not stop. And with our youth, especially in this case, Spanish dominant youth who might be undocumented, who might be DACA, who might be children of immigrants, con nuestros jóvenes no se juega. You do not play with our youth. We have myriad nonprofit and community-based organizations. Let's talk about Padres y Jóvenes Unidos, who would be the first organization that undocumented youth would report anything to. Because they will report when a teacher looks at them cross-eyed. And you that are trying to sow division in our community, you don't know our kids. You completely skipped over the promotoras in the community, who everyone has the mother that everyone runs to. That promotora is going to make sure that things happen. You skipped over the parents. Not at one moment in these accusations did anyone bother to ask the parents to come and seek help. You took away their agency and you skipped them over because you are demonstrating that you see our Latino communities in a pejorative way. And we're not going to stand for it. So I want to thank Tay for having this integrity, for having this courage. It is time for Tay to get back to work. So thank you.
Excuse me, the allergies and the smoke is getting to me from the fires. Good afternoon. My name is Hashim Coates, and while I serve in many capacities, I am here today as an advocate. This opportunity is bittersweet. I'm ecstatic that Director Tay Anderson is making the announcement of returning back to work to his elected duties to fulfill his obligation to serve the students and the community of Denver Public Schools. If his behavior has shown you nothing else, it has shown you his dedication to his constituents and to community, even within the face of danger, coming from state-sanctioned law enforcement agencies, coming from known white supremacist organizations, and coming from the circus clown of white supremacy, Joseph Kemp, who has targeted Tay Anderson, targeted his newborn son, targeted his mother, targeted his family and friends, all while you all have remained silent. Director Anderson has exhibited courage and tenacity that other elected officials, community leaders and organizations can take notes from on how to further stand up for community. And the thing that brings me to this, and that's the thing that brings me to this bittersweet portion. It is beyond painstakingly sad that we are still dealing with a situation where there has been no proven victims of the horrendous accusations that were made. If an accusation was made against someone who was not black, we would not be here. If an accusation such as this was made against Senators Michael Bennet, John Hickenlooper, Congressman Jason Crow, Ken Buck, Ed Perlmutter, or Doug Lamborn, we would not be here. This is a proven fact because we know that an accusation was wielded by Joseph Kemp against Denver Public Schools Board Director Brad Larvick. When that was made, DPS made the conscious decision to pay no attention to it and to shrug it off as not being credible. However, they performed mental gymnastics to state why they are doing what they are doing to the sole black male director, Director Tay Anderson. I ask you all to identify the difference in case I've missed something. In addition to the previous issue I mentioned before, the problem begins to magnify because for 4 months, black community leaders outside of Wanda James, Brother Jeff, and myself have made a conscious decision to remain silent. They made a conscious decision to remain silent in speaking out against the white supremacist apparatus that is moving rampantly through the black community. The baseless claim of rape from a racist white woman. You've heard it before. Every third week in January, around the commemoration of the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and for every February, you can toss a rock and hit a black organization, elected official, or community leader speaking out about the injustices and the travesties black people have had to endure while on this continent. Yet, it has taken 4 months for us to get one black organization to step up and speak out. We are waiting for the others. I feel that the reason is specifically centered in the fear and selfishness, and for some, the hatred and their ego is the reason why we have not heard from them publicly. While the tide is turning, this is in part to the persistence of great people such as Wanda James and Brother Jeff. We have to give acknowledgement and credit to Yellow Scene magazine. We have to give them acknowledgement and credit for them being the only publication, only, and that includes the Denver Post, that is willing to do their due diligence and fall back on their media and journalistic training and do investigative reporting. I take this time to encourage everyone to reach out and subscribe to Yellow Scene magazine. Even if you have to cancel your publications, your subscriptions with other publications, and also advertise within that magazine, because that is the type of journalism that we need. True investigative journalism that's not here for clicks using Tay Anderson's name to rise their dead publication from the grave. I am grateful for people beginning to see the light and being more emboldened to ask questions that adults should ask, and to think critically as intelligent, educated people should do. However, I continue to push for there to be more vocal advocacy as it relates to asking more critically important questions, and specifically to sounding the alarm when white supremacy is active in the black community. Even if it is a black organization, such as Black Lives Matter 5280, or other black leaders that are carrying anti-black work. We know history, and we know that it was a black person that betrayed Nat Turner. We also know history when looking at the Haitian revolutions, who the first people were to be removed from that obstacle. Sellouts are nothing new to our community and struggle. If we are not our grandparents' generation, then we should carry forward the next step of calling out white supremacy, even if we are the only ones to do it and hold that work squarely upon our shoulders. We must hold our shoulders straight, stick our chests out, and use our diaphragms to project and call out these travesties and injustices. I ask that historically black organizations such as the NAACP, the Urban League, and the Divine Nine organizations to refresh themselves on their principles and to understand the spirit in which those organizations were created and reach back to their founders and to our jewels and ask them, would they be proud of our silence? Thank you.
Any questions?
Really quick,
Yep.
It was mentioned during this meeting that it was a white racist woman that made these accusations, and you went on to go, Wanda said that they also accused 5280 for being anti-black. Were you accusing not only a white woman of being racist, but also a black organization of being anti-black and targeting you specifically for being black?
Well, let's ask the author of that remark that question. Let him answer.
Right. So hoping to skate past the cones of sensationalism, this right now is an example of how we need to do a better job at learning American history and taking that thing that people seem to be afraid of, such as critical race theory, into consideration. So if we identify racism being beyond calling me the N-word, beyond burning religious articles inside of our front yards, or beyond people mutilating and molesting their linen, we understand that racism is woven into it. We have done a disservice to society and specifically America by operating under colorblind language and being like, oh, it's okay. Oh, they didn't mean to be racist. So I challenge anyone, you especially since you asked the question, but I understand you might be doing it for voters or for viewers. Study racism. What does that mean? The subtle implications, the things that were overarching and overacting and blatant. So yes, if you do your homework, you then will be able to stand by my side and understand what I said to be true.
But that doesn't, you didn't necessarily answer the question.
Well, what's your question?
Well, the question was simple. It's, are you saying,
I don't do well with simple, but go ahead.
all right, all I'm saying is, are you saying that not only was this woman that made these accusations racist, but also...
How do you define racism?
I'm asking...
I know, I told you. I answered your question in my statement before the question was hatched. How do you define racism? So I can know where to work from you from so I can satisfy your question. I need to know where I need to start.
It's a legit question. Yeah. I mean, what...
How do you define racism?
How do you define racism? I'm just reporting on the story, but if you don't want to answer the question directly,
I think he already did.
I did. Yeah.
So any questions for Chris or I?
I do.
Go ahead.
How do one of the things I've experienced is people have a
I think I'm not going to waste my free black labor educating the public. Educating the public and those viewing about my definition of racism and how I believe that how people should do better. I'm going to ask the viewers and those who are here to do your homework. I can't give you my Venmo for me to do the work, or they'll write another story saying Tay gave his Venmo out at a press conference. We know how the people ask about finances. And so now we need to be able to move forward and get back to work and talking about our students. So I'm going to encourage anybody that wants to know the answer to that question, do your homework about how racism works in this country. It just didn't start when Donald Trump was elected president, because for some reason we all have this mindset that the Central Park 5 didn't exist, that Emmett Till didn't exist. But when we start talking about what's going on here in 2021, we were quick to throw one person under the bus. I was ready, and I stood right here and said, if you bring something forward, I'll be accountable and I will apologize. When former colleagues of Never Again Colorado said, hey, as a teenager, you exhibited behavior that was not the best and that made us uncomfortable and unsafe in our organization that we had as teenagers, what did I do within hours? Apologized and took accountability. In 2018, I apologized and resigned. We didn't get news stories about accountability then. So I'm hoping today this will be the precipice of us saying we need to do the right thing and follow Yellow Scene Magazine's lead and actually do investigative journalism.
I'd like to add something. I've been practicing criminal law for 25 years, and I don't know if this answers either one of your questions, but for some reason, this young man was treated a lot differently than almost anyone else I've ever met. I've never seen such an incredible crush and rush to judgment in the complete absence of any evidence, ever. I just haven't seen it. Is it because he's a young and rising star? Is it because he has a loud voice and sometimes agitates pre-thought and pre-beliefs and gets in there and mixes it up so we can get to a better tomorrow? Is it because of that? Is it because of the tone of his skin? I don't know. I'm just here to tell you, somebody, for some reason, is not treating this person fairly. And that goes to BLM 5280, it goes to the DPS staff, it goes to every one of you members of the community and the press. Step up and be fair.
That's right. That's right.
I do want to ask, you talked about the communication and interactions that you had with your counterparts on the school board when you were really struggling. How do you plan on either mending that relationship or going about it as you return, not just with the board members, but with other district employees, staff, teachers, etc.?
Let me start, and then you can back clean up. First of all, I want to lay the context, because DPS issued a statement today that made it sound like they've just been staying here and being independent and neutral. In reality, DPS staff has thrown this young man under the bus, and they did that from the beginning. They acted on anonymous allegations, perhaps in good faith, but without any basis, okay? And once that investigation started, they treated him like a pariah. They cut him out of communications. They issued public statements without reaching out to him. They denied him input when they were making decisions as board. So they have taken the public statement that they're just, have this independent investigation, which we'll talk about, but they have thrown him under the bus. They have not been fair. And so the task of restoring that harm is a giant one. I don't know what he's going to say to answer that, but I will tell you, a lot of this was the willful disregard of DPS to fundamental issues of fairness. And again, why is that happening with this young man? So what are you going to do to fix it?
To answer that question, it's not solely on my shoulders to mend the harm, because I wasn't the one who started the harm. So when people say restorative justice, it's funny because people forgot that I was a restorative justice coordinator in the district. I know how this program works, which means all of us, including all members of the Board of Education, if they feel offended, be offended. We're going to have to do some restorative justice before we go back and say everything's back to normal. When we go back to our communications with our district, they're going to have to issue statements to all 93,000 families apologizing for their mistake, all 15,000 educators apologizing for their mistake. And then when we meet it for our board retreat in August, I don't expect to talk about how we recover from the COVID pandemic first. I expect to talk about how we recover from what we just went through this summer. Because right now we have students that feel that they are afraid of me. We have teachers that feel like they are afraid of me. We have principals that feel like they are afraid of me. They have painted me to be this angry black man and figure that people should be afraid of. That's not how we work in restorative justice. I'm willing to sit down with them. I'm willing to get to work to doing the restorative justice, but if they don't want to meet me halfway, I'm going out to the community and I'll do it myself. And I'm starting with that. I'm actually holding town halls once again, and we'll start kicking those up in the few weeks, because we're not going to wait till the work resumes in August. I'm starting my job that I was elected to today.
What meetings and decisions were you excluded from?
When it comes down to some of the statements that were made, when they issued a statement in support of the student-led protest that was going on down at the DPS, not the DPS facility, but the state capitol, they issued a statement and emailed my attorney 3 minutes prior to publishing it on the website, saying this is the statement that we are issuing, and we just wanted to give you a heads up. Surprisingly, I would have signed my name to that statement. I would have engaged in those conversations with them. There's things going on within internal HR matters that have been brought to me by other DPS employees saying, have you heard my situation? I've reached out to other board members. They say they are aware of my situation. I don't have a single email regarding their personal HR situations. I don't have phone calls or any text log regarding those situations. So when it comes to people reaching out to me asking if I knew that the different things were taking place, if I knew that they were issuing this statement, no. I've been isolated from the DPS board. Also because I know one of you will turn around and be like, well, didn't you take the step back? Yeah, because I had a mental health crisis, and when I reached out for help from my colleagues, their response was, we won't stay silent for you any longer.
What did you understand them to mean when they said that?
When they won't say,
When
yeah.
they won't stay silent for you, what did you understand them to mean?
I would ask them what did they mean, because when I read that, I was not only offended, but it wasn't an ask. I never asked them, don't say anything. I mean, they've already issued a statement at 9:30 at night saying that DPS issued the statement saying that MK Fleming was talking about me at 9:30 at night. But when it came down to, hey, I'm just asking for a leave of absence. I'll be back in August. We don't have to do any sort of statements. You don't do a statement when Barbara O'Brien misses a meeting. We don't do any. So the fact that I'm going to miss one voting meeting, and I committed to voting for the superintendent because there was there was uncertainty of how the vote would work. I voted for Dr. Marrero. I fulfilled my constitutionally provided duties, and I told him we missed one meeting. And they felt compelled that they needed to say, this is you trying to silence us. This is not me trying to silence you. I'm just saying I had a mental health crisis and I almost lost my life. You were going to be vacant a seat. And the first thing you say to me is, not how are you doing? How can we support you? It's we won't stay silent for you. It showed me where their priorities were at.
Yeah.
The statement from the board today mentioned that this is like a dormant period. The investigation is still going on. Maybe you kind of mentioned this with the town halls coming up, but why today? Why are you making this decision now when there's not work to do until August?
Well, that's just not true. There's constant work. Every day he wakes up an elected official. Okay? Every day he is obligated by law to serve as a board member. You're taking a very narrow view of what a board member does. So you're talking about meetings, maybe formal processes. One of the big things he needs to do starting right away is this restoration, trying to heal the harm that's occurred. So this is not a dormant period. And the reason we're coming back now is we were misled. We were told this is going to be a 30-day investigation. And then they said, well, another 30 days. And we thought to ourselves, okay, it's complicated, it's important, 60 days, fine. Because that will not put us in a situation where he's going to be either statutorily at risk of being thrown off the board. Okay, he's got a legal obligation to make meetings. When we started to hear that the investigation was going into totally new areas, issues that had not even existed when the investigation began, that's when we knew there was no end line here that was going to jibe with his ongoing obligations. And fortunately, he became more strong, and he got over this crisis that he struggled with. Today, he stands here strong as a damn mountain, and he's coming back. And this is not a dormant period. This is a period when this investigation, which DPS, you talk about DPS's statement? Let's talk about DPS's statement. They said they were concerned about a black man, and they wanted due process for him. Guess what Tay Anderson has not been given? No due process, okay? Due process is due process of the law, okay? No laws are being followed. Not even Title IX. Title IX is a law. So is the criminal law. So are fundamental processes of due process, like confronting your accuser, like being able to subpoena witnesses, like being able to produce evidence, either testimony or physical. That's not happening. This is a independent investigation by name only. ILG, Investigations Law Group, is hired by DPS. DPS is their client. They are not appointed by an independent person. They don't report to an independent person. They are hired by DPS Board of Directors, report to them, presumably are continuing to report to them throughout this process. We've not been given any updates or reports. They work for DPS, okay? Now, I'm not here to vilify ILG, because in the end, we hope and we expect that they are going to conduct a fair and thorough investigation. But don't read this stuff from DPS and say, oh, well, we want to give him due process, because he's not getting any due process, and they're not independent. And when they say they have trained investigators, these are investigators, again, they are doing the best they can, but these are investigators from a small private law firm that does investigations into workplace environments, okay? These are 63 or up to 70, depending upon how you count it and who you listen to, serious criminal allegations. They don't have subpoena power. They don't have the power to compel people to come in and testify. They are a private group that's waiting for people to call them and give them information. So yes, we hope they do it fairly. But DPS coming out and saying that, they're looking out for Tay's due process rights and have hired some qualified, completely independent agency to do this is just not accurate. Again, we hope and we trust that ILG is doing their job. We've cooperated completely with them. We're not going to disclose any details or information about the information of that investigation because we honor it. But for DPS to come out and say that because they want a black man to get due process, this is what they've done is really quite disingenuous. They have thrown him under the bus, and they have treated him like he's guilty based on anonymous allegations, standards that even the media should be appalled at. Never mind an elected board of school directors. They have lawyered up. Okay, DPS has hired their own lawyer. DPS board has hired a lawyer. Guess who won't talk to Tay Anderson's lawyer? The DPS board lawyer. Okay, so you want to talk about being left out, ma'am? DPS board has hired a lawyer who won't answer to one of the board members' questions. So,
and I'll say this is the reason why now is because when we were expecting, you all ran the story saying we expect the results to be by the end of the summer. That's what we were expecting too. We wouldn't have had this press conference if we didn't get communication saying now we're thinking about 4 to 5 more weeks, which now puts us in mid-August. That puts us already past a work session. That already puts me past delaying meetings with the superintendent. That puts me past actually getting back to work on August 23rd when the students walk through those doors. We got to get back to work now. I don't know if anybody else realized we've been in a pandemic and we have to make sure our students, especially our young unvaccinated students, make sure that they have the best health standards going in forward. I've had parents reach out that says, I don't know a single thing that DPS is doing because I don't have communication from any other board member posting on social media that's giving us updates. You got parents calling me saying, "Hey, I need to get my kid enrolled in school. Can you help me?" I have to tell them no because I'm on a break, and you got to call somebody else. Well, I called this ex-school board member, and I called this one. Nobody's picking up the phone. So if there's only one school board member that's willing to pick up the phone from just a neighbor down the street in 5 Points and said, "Let me get you to the right person," and I'm that person, then it's time for me to get back to work and make sure that they have that lifeline so they can get to contact.
So this is a two-part question that I have here. Obviously, if you miss 3 or more meetings, you lose your seat on the board. Parents have spoken out, people have talked to me, and they say they just don't feel comfortable with you going back before the investigation is complete. What do you say to those parents that are worried that, say, a full investigation needs to be put in place before you come back? And the second part of my question is, what new areas is this investigation going into that was disclosed in your letter?
So I'll take the first part, and Chris can take the second part. Parents and individuals in our district, everybody's going to have a different opinion on this matter. They want the investigation to conclude. Guess what? Tay wanted it to conclude as well. However, I was duly elected to this position. And right now, the only people that can take me out is the voters. And you'd have to get 40% of the signatures of valid signatures of those who actually voted in that election. So if you choose to do so, I'll see you on the battlefield. But right now, we got to get back focusing on students. People coming to the school board meeting saying we don't want critical race theory and I hate Tay Anderson, I assumed that they wouldn't want me back on the school board. They were opposed to me taking police out of schools. They were opposed to gender neutral restrooms. They were opposed to everything that I've done in the first place. So right now, some of those parents that we hear and the loudest voices on the school board meeting, the ones that are showing up, we also got to follow the history of what else they're saying. They're not just saying, I want Tay Anderson not to show back up to work. They're also saying, I don't want black people to learn their own history in the schools.
Well, let me add to that. Here's an answer. Why don't you, I would say to those parents or those administrators, come to us, come meet with us. Come down to Brother Jeff's. He'll talk to anybody. Let's try to resolve those concerns. Let's not hype them. Let's not broadcast the divisions. Let's work on the solution. So to those people who are uncomfortable with them, come forward. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about the fact that there's been no credible evidence. We'll talk about the standards that this investigation are applying. We'll talk about what has happened, what hasn't happened, and what the basis of their fear is. And we'll try to resolve that fear the way grown-ups would, between one another, not through social media or mass media stories. So that's what I would say as to the first part. As to the second part, I have to honor some boundaries of this investigation. But I can tell you that the investigation has chosen to go into areas that were not known at the time of the beginning of the investigation. Specifically, M.K. Fleming's statements. So when I think they promised and we promised we're all going to be done in 30 days, of course, they had no knowledge that M.K. was going to come forward with completely bombastic, unsupported, third-party claims. And we were surprised that they were even going to bite on it. Quite honestly, but hey, they're trying to be fair, they're trying to be thorough, we get it. But that's an example of something that they've gone into that was not even contemplated at the time they were hired by DPS, or at the time we agreed to the timeline and the scope of the investigation to begin with. So that's an example.
And we'll do a question from Brother Jeff, and then we'll wrap up.
Just quickly, I've got a question for Chris, and then I've got a comment or a question for the press also. If there are 63 and more alleged victims of sexual assault inside of DPS with a particular population, why are we focusing only on Tay and not asking if DPS is not a safe place for all children? Wondering why the press isn't asking about what's in a system that would allow 63 or 4 individuals to be sexually assaulted by one person. That's like I want to know why this is just about Tay, and are these parents sending their children into a safe environment? As the investigation, when has it become the purview of us to wait on DPS for a criminal situation?
Right.
Tay does not work for DPS. and Tay does not work for the Board of Education. If there's a crime, are we saying that DPS has the purview to talk to victims, find victims, and then let us know about them in August? Why isn't this a discussion about what you're waiting for the police department to deal with? And so, Chris, my question to you is, yes, I appreciate you following the lead of a DPS investigation, but I would love for you to underscore this is a criminal offense if sexual assault is taking place.
Absolutely.
And so would you please address that for me?
Sure. So the investigations law group is conducting what they call as an independent investigation under no real law or even professional standards. I specifically asked for the standards that were going to be applied to this investigation prior to the beginning and was not given that. So first of all, you got to remember you're talking about a private investigation group who is not pursuing or following any statutory or even published professional guidelines. Second of all, the standard of their investigation is a preponderance of the evidence. That's more likely than not. In matters involving liberty, in matters involving children, we have different standards in the law. Probable cause to make an arrest, not there. Clear and convincing evidence to take away your child, not there. Proof beyond all reasonable doubt to take your liberty, not there. So you've got investigations law group, Brother Jeff, who's operating as an employed contract with DPS, investigating as best they can to a standard of presumption, standard of proof. So, Brother Jeff, if here's the tough answer to your question. DPS doesn't believe there were 62 victims. And if there were, this man would be in custody right now. So the answer, Brother Jeff, is there's a double standard. Okay, there's a double standard that they want to hold him at least under suspicion when in their heart of hearts they know there was no single serial predator that was identifying DACA students and raping them. You know, what was it? That someone did the timeline, 2 every couple days during the time frame. So they know that's ridiculous. But it's important, right? Of course it's important. And if there is a serial predator, by God, we better find that person, right? And nobody's saying otherwise. But the truth of the matter is, Brother Jeff, those are bombastic and patently ridiculous allegations that have been pinned to my client, Tay Anderson. And regardless of how ridiculous it is, they're saying, well, now we want to expand the scope of the investigation to do that. And we're going to ask this private law firm to investigate 60 criminal acts and apparently a rape that occurred many years ago. That's not what they do. They're not law enforcement. They're not detectives. They are a civil law firm that are tooled up to do workplace environment cases. And they're stuck in this quagmire of a case because they keep running down the rabbit holes that are being thrown in front of them by those who would divide this community. And so they have ownership in that. That's why this investigation isn't over, because they keep running over here and running over there and running over here and running over there, and nothing's coming up. So while we respect that process, and we're going to continue to respect it, and while we hope they come to the right conclusion, we are moving forward, and they are not qualified or chartered to investigate criminal actions. And if they had any evidence of a crime, the first thing they would do, the first thing any of us would do, pick up the phone, call the police. Right. That's what we have them there for. That's not happened. So why are they taking so long? They're trying to get things done. They're not quite tooled up to do it. They're chasing down all kinds of rabbit holes, and they want to be responsible. And I respect that. But they're trying to find a way out of a situation that is really out of control. And we're starting today to take control by saying, we've had enough. We will continue to cooperate, but we're coming back. And you get your elected board member back starting today.
And I would like to close with this. And I know probably I'll get reprimanded by my team and family later, but I see the discomfort in media's faces here today. And I'm disappointed because I know that some of you all feel uncomfortable with some of the things that may have been said today. I'm uncomfortable when my mom goes to a store and gets attacked and gets accosted by people that feel that they can go up to her and yell at her and call her son a rapist. I'm uncomfortable knowing that my former campaign staff has had their addresses posted up there. A 13-year-old was threatened to have their house burned down and then raped. That's what's uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable with other African Americans in this community when they stand up and say, wait, we have some questions. They're called names and then their addresses are doxed or whatever. This situation is not just about vindicating or clearing somebody's name. You got to do your job. Yes. And right now, I'm going to tell you, as somebody who's spoken to many of you all, you not only have failed me, but you also are complicit in the white supremacist attacks that have happened to my family. So I'll end with, I hope we can get back to doing some restorative justice, including with the media, including with Denver Public Schools, including with our students. It's time to get back to work. Have a good day. Chris.